Hi there, everyone. It's Karen back with Naturally with Karen. I think I'm going to be changing my logo and my business name after all the bludgeoning of Karens recently in the world. But we're here on a really cozy Sunday night. I've got a couple pages of notes that I've been working on this particular live stream for a couple of days, just here and there. Nothing super major, but probably a couple of hours. Because with doing tissue testing, hair tissue testing, I have found that all of these elements that I test for with people, they've become a part of me understanding my client and myself, the dogs and my clients' canine companions, understanding the personality based on what these elements are doing. And so we're going to talk about sodium people and the wave, and sodium, how it's related to water, and sodium, how it's related to electricity, and sodium, how it's related to me understanding when I do your hair tissue test, I'm able to understand, understand, overstand, for those of you that know word sound, what's going on with your adrenals and your energy level. So I thought instead of standing up, as much as I love standing and I loved public speaking in college, I thought we'd have a cozy couch. I've got Pablo over here on the cozy couch, if you can see him. So he likes to be snuggled under the blanket, the relaxed blanket here. So we're just having a cozy night. We're pretty low key. I've been doing, if you don't know and it's the first time you've ever joined me, I should probably say that I've been doing wellness work in reversing disease, and I have a whole range of ways that I perform assessments for people so they're able to determine their own individual biochemistry and they can see it for themselves. Instead of creating a dependence upon me, I create a position of uh, self knowledge so that you know in the future, hey, wait a minute, that's right. Shaman taught me to do this, this, and this, and I can see that all these signs, these communications from my own body are showing me what I need to do. So I thought we'd wait for a couple of people to join. I put this on my Facebook page that I was going to be doing the sodium beings or the sodium people, and a lot of people wanted to come on board for this. I also want to give a really big love from my heart with my mama pendant today to Andrew for sending me the sweetest message ever saying, I think he said, it's criminal that you don't have more subscribers and that you just have such great content. Andrew, thank you. It means a lot to me. And hopefully that's anonymous enough that I'm just using a first name. But I thank you so much because that sweetness that I receive from each and every one of you when I come on and I see, okay, we're going to get to 1,000 subscribers. So I can take the phone outside, and people are going to want more of my content. That's what brings me back. That's what brings me back to the screen. And I will put together more and more and more for you during a time where there's really very few people that have what took me 37 years to learn. And I am finding ways to be able to bring it in a distilled version so that people can really get the best out of what they need. So, in order for me to be able to continue, I'm not monetized, I don't make any money on my channel or anything like that. But in order for me to continue, I really want to be able to not have to just use my laptop. So I'm looking for 1,000 subscribers is what I'm looking for. Before we get started, I do have books on trace elements by the owner of the lab that I am a HTMAP, which means hair tissue mineral analysis practitioner. You have to be approved by the lab, and you have to be someone who has other credentials. They don't just set you up in business. It's not a turnkey business. It takes time. But most people need to know more than what they know about trace elements. And so for that reason, I have a book. They're brand new. They're not used, $20 a piece and $5 for shipping. So if you hit me up, you would go to paypal.me/shaman and it would be $25. Means I'll get probably $23.50 when PayPal takes their cut out of it, which will give me $3.50 to ship you the book in a nice nice padded container in the United States. If it's outside the United States, it'll be a little bit more. I know from shipping hair tissue test kits to Scotland and other places in the world that it could be up to $27 to mail just a single flat envelope. So let's get into sodium. I suggest that you find yourself a piece of paper. I don't normally come to my live streams, with some kind of a script or whatever, but I wanted it to be succinct. And I started off with about 8 to 10 pages of notes. And I was like, oh, I got to include this and I got to include that because I got really excited about it. And I'm excited to share what I know is going to really help you out. So we're electrical beings. Dr. Sabi knew that when he talked about electric food. And I knew that back in 1965 and 66 when I touched that apricot and I felt that electricity from the food. It's not here anymore, but we can bring it back. And I've actually met one farmer, a Chinese man, who understood the land, the geomancy, and the ley lines, and the minerals that needed to go into the food. And so I had a conversation with him, and he brightened my whole world. This probably happened 2015, 16. I had a couple conversations with him, and it just really spurred me on to having faith. So get a piece of paper because you're going to want to take some notes, or watch it again if that's what you want to do. This one's probably not going to be a super short video because I've got 3 pages. It's pretty succinct. It won't take me that long. But I'm not a straightforward, linear kind of a person. I'm a shaman, and shamans are very, very intuitive and very perceptive, and we like to build in the storytelling. Otherwise, you don't get the full flavor. So speaking of flavor, I'm going to take a sip of my mud water, cacao powder, a little tiny bit of raw honey, and some vegan coconut cream that I whipped up with a mud water whip, which is $15. Give myself a drink because this is pleasure for me. It brings me pleasure to share this with you. And it brings me pleasure when you come back and go, hey, thank you. That was meaningful to me. It really made a lot of sense. It's helping me put pieces together. A lot of what I bring is because is knowledge, because I am going to be 60 years old this year in July. And I would have looked vivacious and vibrant, and my aging wouldn't have been as accelerated as it is right now. But for those who don't know me, we went on a 4-year wild toad ride with my son being addicted by opiates following breaking of a clavicle and had a surgery. And so I wanted to get to know sodium because I had the strongest digestion ever. I mean, I could digest anything. Food combining, who cares? I'd had 35 years or so at that point of really building digestion and having really good, strong gut strength and hardy adrenals. And sure, I'd had a few bounces in life, but I'd learned to regenerate myself back, and I was helping my clients to do that. And then I got hit, and my son died 14 months ago, a year and 2 months ago. And everything that I had kind of, put on the back burner for me because I needed to be in fight or flight for about 2 years preceding his death. So 2018 and 2019 were an absolute blur. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't taking supplements. I wasn't taking care of myself. It was really trying to keep my son alive through something so horrendous that I absolutely have to write about it and I have to share about it. And so I couldn't understand why I kept getting so much inflammation, why it felt like I just couldn't digest right, why when I would lay down, I would have to use my son's pillow because I've been a floor sleeper with no pillow for many, many years. But I took his pillow out of love naturally, and I wanted to sleep on it. And now I actually have to sleep on it for a little while longer because when I lay all the way flat, the fluid, I can feel it start to bubble and come up. And this is what sodium does. Sodium is so important. That's Fire snoring. Fireboy is snoring, the big dog, because it has a lot to do with the salt water that you are. So let's dig in. I'm going to put my glasses on. It looks studious here. But actually because I need them at this moment because of my inflammation. Sodium is the most important carrier of electricity in your body in terms of the trace elements. It's one of the top three, okay? Sodium is element number 11. 11 has been incredibly important in my life in the last year and a half, in particular, because everything surrounding my son's death kept coming up 11 synchronicities. And I mean, it was to the point that it was so uncanny, it was mind boggling. Okay. The abbreviation for sodium on the chemical chart, so when people write, they don't want to always write out SODIUM, they write out capital N and small letter A. Na is the abbreviation for sodium. But where did that come from? Na actually came from the other word, the longer word, which is natrium, which comes from what? Nature. Sodium comes from nature, right? It's an earth-based element. You don't make it, okay? So we cannot make sodium. We get it from the earth, okay? It works with the other macro elements that you heard me speak about in the thyroid video, if you watch that, which is calcium, magnesium, and potassium. And the 4 macro elements are so important because they're going to tell me if you have or you don't have energy. If you have energy, it's because your thyroid and your adrenals are doing what they're supposed to do and helping you with ATP, which is, how we make it's the product, the byproduct of how we have energy from thyroid and adrenals. Okay. Let's see. It is in your blood, sweat, and tears. So that's why your tears are kind of salty. If you ever tasted your tears, they run down into our mouths when we're little children. It tastes kind of salty. The blood's a little bit salty. Our sweat, if you kind of go like this and you're like sweating and you're kind of embarrassed or whatever, your sweat is also a little bit salty. Sodium is electrical and it needs magnetism. So the electric, we live on what we've been told is an electromagnetic earth, right? Electromagnetic earth with gravity. Sodium is more than salt. But if you speak with people, especially if I have clients that are elders, my age and older, and I say, we need to bring your sodium levels down, the first thing that we all think about is salt. But it's so much more than salt, okay? It's sodium chloride for sure, which is table salt, and we don't want to have plain white sodium chloride because it hardens our arteries, it creates more arthritis, okay? But it's also sodium bicarbonate, that's baking soda. It's also sodium nitrate, which is used to preserve meats, which is another form of salt that's also synthetic. And it's also MSG, or mono 1 sodium glutamate, monosodium glutamate. So what does it do? What does sodium do for us? What's the big deal about sodium? It regulates our blood volume, right? So when you go in and you get some of these serum blood testing checks and assays done by your doctor, they might look at the mean corpuscle volume and MCV. They might look at your hemoglobin. They might look at different blood cell counts. They might look at lots of different things. And they say, well, this really has to do with the size of your red blood cells. And this has to do with, blah, blah, blah. But sodium regulates your blood volume, your blood pressure, your osmotic equilibrium, and also the pH of the body and the blood. It pushes fluid outside of the cells. So sodium pushes the fluid to the outside of the cells, right? Especially under stress. So this is what happens. You become under great mental stress. It could be financial stress. It could be mom and dad giving you pressure. It could be final exams at school. It could be life-threatening stress like I was under with my child. It could be, oh my God, my child is gone. Oh my God, I failed as a parent. And if it's enormous stress, more than you can bear, which is what's happened to me, and it will take you time to recover, the body is going to flood the fluid it's going to flood sodium in the body. That sodium is going to drop the magnesium down. This is where a person starts to go into a cycle where the magnesium is dropped down. And if we don't replace that magnesium, we start going into a lot more heavy PTSD, if it's enormous stress, anxiety. We can't get ourselves out of survival brain. So now the OCD starts to kick in. I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do this and I'll keep my life extremely ordered so I can feel safe. This is real. This is real for people that have gone through really serious trauma. And it's real for people that are going through anxiety and they can't get rid of it, and the doctor's drugs doesn't do anything, and they can't take just some basic amino acids because there's a psychological component to it as well. Okay, so so especially under stress and at the behest of one particular hormone, which is aldosterone. So your adrenals are two parts. You've got an adrenal gland that's a tiny little gland that sits on top of your kidneys in your back here. You got the kidneys, right on top of the kidney are these little adrenal glands. And norepinephrine and adrenaline and noradrenaline and the hormones and the messengers that they make. But they also make aldosterone. And aldosterone is used in conjunction with the adrenal glands. And aldosterone sends a message where then the sodium goes in and the body goes into this massive inflammation. It's time to slow down. It's time to repair. We can't stay under stress much longer. And this is where I work with clients that have autoimmune or several autoimmune, or they're so degenerated they can't get up and go to work, or they've gone into cancers, or their body has gone into various levels of degeneration, which make it so unsavory they don't have enough energy to function through a full day. Okay. I personally advise my clients, and I love to get my sodium through sea vegetables. And I do that pretty much every single day. So whereas a lot of people are going to take and get sodium, iodine, and other minerals through tablet form, I like to do that less, unless I know someone, by looking at their levels on their hair tissue patient report, is going to need help now. And by getting them help now, I can get their energy up enough so then they can start to rely on sea vegetables. There's a really great book, I think it's called Ocean Greens. I've got it over on my shelf over there, that gives you great vegan recipes on how to make things out of sea vegetables. And I strongly, highly encourage you to check out some of these kinds of books or start exploring and experimenting. I began with using kombu as a broth, Kombu, at the natural food store, $10 a bag. It looks really pricey at first. You put it in the water, and I later started finding out about Japanese seaweeds as opposed to Atlantic seaweeds. And I wrote a lot of great tips for my readers inside my book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, which I need to finish revising here. Okay. Diatomaceous Earth is also a really wonderful tool. And as far as the sodium, it's got about 2% sodium in it. It's got, or 2% iron and 5% sodium. It's got magnesium. It's got silicone. It's got 33% magnesium. But it's also got heavy metals because, hey, Pablo, you getting up? Because of the arsenic and the lead and everything in our environment has also made its way into the sea. So this is diatomaceous earth. In short, we call it capital DE. D as in dog, E as in Edward. And you can buy it in a big 1 pound bag. Make sure that you get food grade diatomaceous earth. But I use that just like I use a lot of different types, bentonite and Redmond clay and different types of clays for detoxification. So when you've been using all these things for 37 years and then you have a client in front of you, you can see the patient report, you can see them on the screen. I have read their wellness. I've had intimate conversations with them about what's going on, how they poop and they pee and they sweat and sleep and sex drive and, their energy levels and everything else. You start to get a sense for, okay, now you retest in about 3 months, like I'm doing for myself, and I've done for all 3 of the dogs. And I can see if the energy, by checking in part the sodium levels, if the energy has started to pull up for the person. So just like for a little girl that I did, and for a young woman that I hair tissue tested about 6 months ago that actually died. And you're right, Bob? And so it's important that we look at these levels because your doctors are not picking this stuff up, and they're certainly not picking it up from your blood testing. Okay, So the only thing about diatomaceous earth is I don't want you to run out and start using that. Well, I'm going to get all my minerals that way. I use it for specific instances. I use it when there's parasites. I use it when there's other things that I have to clear out of the body. So it's not just an all over supplement for this. We'll go into maybe some other options in more live streams. Okay. Now, this is kind of a fun thing, but if the abbreviation, so I built this into the storytelling for fun. If the abbreviation for sodium is Na, which stems from the word natrium, Natrium, then it takes me back, it harkens me back to the time of growing up around 65 and 1966. And my grandmother, who was personal friends with Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet and wrote many other things. And I remember her speaking with him on the telephone. And they were sharing a great interest and passion for his, because he was just a lay individual like myself, right? Who really, really devoted enormous time to learning the symbology and reviewing 22 or more, I believe it was 22 when he was speaking with my grandmother, of the cuneiform tablets. So these were, as Grandma and he referred to, the Naki people, Naki, although their official title was the Anunnaki. And Grandma had always told me that we had a sister planet, that some of us here on Earth had come over to occupy this planet, and her name was Tiamat. I will never forget these conversations. They were not just one or two conversations, they were many. And I remember that I really couldn't ever speak about these things with other people in school because it was like me trying to speak Greek to, people that were speaking Italian. They just didn't really get it, But also with Dr. Ian Stevenson and with several people, including a man by the name of Michael, who we went to go visit in person, and a woman in San Francisco who was a great priestess, who at that time, when I was so young, I think I was about 9 at that time, and I had warts on my left hand, and my mother, who was starting to embrace all of the marketing and the television in the house. You can go get the compound W. Well, that didn't do it. You can get them burnt off. Well, that didn't do it. You can get them frozen off. Well, that didn't do it. You can do this. And then the doctor was like, I remember hearing him. And I was like, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't like the doctor. And Grandma would say, don't you ever trust the doctor. They don't know what they're doing. They will give you pills and drugs and trap you up and catch you up on things, were her words. And so Mom got trapped up and I got trapped up with gynecological issues, trusting again, well, everyone else is going, maybe I should. But most of my life I have not doctored. And so I'm thankful for that. So Grandmother talked about the Anunnaki, the Naki people, Naki. And they were a race of extremely extra large, very large hands, hyper intelligent, extremely intuitive, perceptive abilities because the brain was different. And if you read the Bible, and Grandmother read the Bible and she read voraciously, which is probably why I've done the same thing. You see it modeled when you're a young child. My son did the same thing until he went into the schools and they created accelerated reader and they burnt him out on reading. Well, just read these kindergarten books and get the points. We need you to get more points and more points. And I, marched into the school on several occasions saying, what are you doing? You're changing everything that I've put in place from a place of love for mathematics and reading and nature and good food. Everything you've done, you've fashioned my child into something I don't even recognize, and it's going to backfire not only on me, but on him. And sure enough, that's what happened. And that is what's going to be in my book about opiates, because it's the truth. The Anunnaki people preceded, and then we had the Nazca people, Nazca from Peru, right? And we have the Nazca lines. We have the geoglyphs, of which I posted on Facebook today, if you're one of the folks on my Facebook page. And these geoglyphs, we have the simpletons of today that are so mentally reduced intentionally by design, word sound, that they say, oh, they just had such a reverence for nature. Everything needed to be looked at through the lens as if it was a religion, when it had nothing to do with that. We have the movie people, the Navi, N-A apostrophe V-I of the movie Avatar, right? Which again showed very much like Naki people. They made them blue because you got to remember that our elemental balance was very different. So we were not in white skin bags at that time. We were in very bronzed and blue-black skin bags. And everyone knew this, but it's almost like it's been hushed and sequestered over to the side. So if you get into trace elements, there's no way you can not know that, but yet still it's not really even spoken about. Okay, so we had the Naki, the Anunnaki, the Nazca, okay, the Navi, excuse me, the Navi of Avatar. You can say, well, those weren't really a people, but were they or were they not? I mean, I don't know, because I really don't trust that what I've been fed as his story, as history, is absolutely true. In fact, I usually discount it and I go out and I try to search for myself and see if I can find remnants of truth. And that's what grandmother did when she read me the book, Merlin Stone, When God Was a Woman. Kind of a funky title, but don't discount it. Inside is loaded with nuggets. It's what I found when I read the more meaty book, The Chalice and the Blade by Rian Eisler. And I just started in a very hungry way, in a very voracious way, searching and seeking. I mean, I will spend hours a day going down one thread and down the next. My research is especially my life, nature, my researching, my reading, my writing. Okay, so when you want answers, you go to an elder who's going to put it all together for you in a way that you're not going to find anywhere else. Doctors did not get this through AMA training. They're not going to get it. They don't have time to get it. They have to stay in the lane of keep on doing the protocol that they're doing. And lastly, when we're speaking about sodium people, the mythological or the avatar, as well as the Nazca in Peru before Christ, and the Naki, right, long before, potentially those who came over from Tiamat, potentially. Then we have the Nazi, N-A-Z-I, right, more recent times that now have flooded over into America in the hundreds. And the Nazi knew with certainty, my people know this, they knew with certainty that there was bloodline out there. They wanted to find it. They wanted to experiment on it. They wanted to know exactly where it was. And so experiments were done on humans that were paid for by corporations. Experiments with some of the drugs that are being used on some of your people and my son more recently. And so once your child goes into a school, the education, the brainwash education that takes them away from germinating seeds and being connected with nature, the natrium, the sodium, the electrical aspect of life, will mind fuck them. Okay. All right. So let me keep going here. We talked about nature. The NA abbreviation is also part of nature. It's part of nation, right? So you got to look at the word sound, and we start to put the pieces together. It's like a puzzle eventually, okay? It's like you take the other pieces, like let's take the element iron, and you got the female, the Fe male, the iron male that's supposed to be from the rib of man, or is it actually from the ribonucleic acid? Is males from the ribonucleic acid, the RNA of females. I think it's the opposite way around, okay? You take the cuneiform tablets, CUNIFORM, and the abbreviation for that, or the prefix of that word, is actually stemming from the word copper. Copper is another very electrical element. It's a creative element. It's an element that's in males and females, but it's largely connected with females. You take Cro-Magnon man, and you start to see where magnesium is much more largely introduced into what I have been teaching for a very long time is domestication. I need to do an entire video on that. I have a course on that for $12 on my website at naturallywithkaren.com. I bought 2 other domains today, which I'm hoping I can find some help because I'm not a technical individual and I got such amazing insights from Andrew. Thank you again, Andrew. But I don't always know how to implement them and I need help. I really do. So I need to hire someone who can help me with that, with these 2 new domains. Gold, let's take that abbreviation. The chemical abbreviation for gold is the letters A as in apple and U as in Urantia. AU. Now, if you think about, gold is a noble metal. Gold is what I've got on a crown. You may have it on a crown. Gold is what we like to have on our jewelry. It doesn't tarnish, right? Not so much. But gold is also, you got to think about Osar and Oset. When I was 9 years old, my grandmother went to the Rosicrucian Museum and she got me a necklace with what she called at that time Isis. I always grew up with Nefertiti overlooking our entire family gathering area. And Bastet, the cat, was off to the side. I've got a picture of me that I often post on Facebook. See, there's people that knew all about these things that wouldn't touch religion and politics with a 10-foot pole because they knew better. They knew better. Okay? So the abbreviation for gold is AU, and you got to look to Osar and Oset. If we look to Egypt, and then we look to the true name of Egypt, which is Kemet, K-E-M-E-T. They're Kemetic symbols. I'm a Kemetic, certified Kemetic yoga instructor as of 2015. Okay. So as a child growing up, I was immensely fascinated with Sumerian ways because of my grandmother reading to me, from the Bible and explaining to me you had to sift. Remember I showed you my sifter on one of my videos? You have to sift through the Bible to find the original nuggets. And that's what I have done over the many, many years. I need to find a nugget and I start sifting through the Bible. Okay. I'm not religious. I don't do that. But the Bible has enormous wisdom and prophecy within it because of the original writers, most of which were women. That's my opinion. You can have a different one. So A, the Anu, the Naki people. A, the Avatar people. A, America, and I could keep going. You get the idea. A, Avalon. There's something in common with all of these. Okay. These are entities by design. Okay. The Naki, again, were extra large, powerful creators. The Bible speaks about, and Grandma spoke about, this special race of people coming here from Tiamat, from our sister planet, she said. Our sister planet to Earth had a problem, had a collision. Some people explain that as a collision with Nibiru. And Nibiru is on track again. And this has been taught and spoken of in many families, but relatively few compared to the whole. Okay, so when Tiamat could no longer host all of the peoples, the people came over here. It's spoken about in the Bible as the Nephilim. The Nephilim, very tall, large hands, highly, much higher intelligence. And that bloodline has been sought out, has been targeted, has been aimed for, has been sought out, as spoken of in Da Vinci Code. It's a movie I did go see because I was told about that movie many years ago when it first came out, Da Vinci Code. If you haven't seen it, I recommend that you see it. And they're looking for the woman that they know contains in the movie the blood of Jesus. But I really strongly suggest you watch Da Vinci Code. I'll fix my pillow here. Okay. The Navi tried to protect themselves from largely ignorant beings, and their medicine shows us it was connected with nature. You see the shaman who's leading the people into having group mind, essentially, is what it is. They've made group mind out, meaning, the internet, the major searches that you do have made group mind out to be something, bad and terrible. And I know we're at 35 minutes. I know this is not going to be a short one. I can't finish it in 5 minutes. This is not a 5-minute video. So I hope that you can watch it or watch it in pieces and stay with me because I have a lot of points to make. Okay. The Na'vi tried to protect themselves in the movie, and there is a sequel coming out to that Avatar movie, just like there's a sequel that has been projected 2 years ago on both of these movies to come out in 2021 or 2022, respectively. I think The Matrix comes out in 2021, the new one, and the Avatar comes out in 21 or 22, both of which I definitely plan on seeing. But they tried to protect themselves by what has become a very, as my grandmother said, she said, you will be living during a time where I'm no longer on Earth. And she left Earth in 2010 with Zechariah Sitchin and Dr. Ian Stevenson. They all left. They were born right around the same time, 1918, along with my military police grandfather, who was straight German, Robert Hodges. So in the movie, it was doing its best to show that we've become so disconnected from sodium, from natrium, from nature, from medicine, from sustainability, from our most important thing should be clean water and clean earth, as I've said over and over and over and over. Our immunity is in the soil, okay? So salt strengthens sodium. Salt strengthens water's ability to conduct electricity. Big point, okay? It does it with electromagnetics. It creates a moving magnetic field in the water. Once you understand, like you really, really understand this, you start to understand how the matrix is harnessing you as a copper top. That's what you really get. I'm just gonna dish it right out there, okay? So the salt then creates an opposing magnetic field. So this opposing magnetic field, this magnetism and this opposing starts to create a wave, and the wave is the energy. The energy is coming through in waves. Go back to the Pink Floyd song, okay? Make it fun. Go back to my being a teenager and being at De Anza College in the planetarium and, smoking as much cannabis and Colombian cannabis as we could and going in and watching the light shows. I always wanted to take my son to those too. Okay. So it's very, very important. Sodium's very, very, very important to creating electrical energy, and you don't just make it. You get it from the earth. So your domestication by design was to be able to become electromagnetic in part through the use of sodium, but also to balance this out with the magnesium. So when you became pushed and pushed and pushed, like you're being pushed right now through this operation, to be stressed and phobic, and you're fed fraudulent lies by Louis Pasteur about rabies, about this, about viruses, about all this stuff. And you become phobic and tired and exhausted and weary, and privileges are denied, and social distancing and facial identity devices and all this stuff. You end up depleting these elements, and they don't just disappear, they're being taken. I hope that's crystal clear, okay? Where do you find magnets? Okay, magnets are more and more and more and more going to be something that you're going to be concerned about. Elon Musk is using them. Various people are using them to drive you and to drive your energy. You are a skin bag full of salt water and loaded up with these macro and micro trace elements. And if you get drained long enough, you're gone, okay? So sodium and these other macro elements have everything to do with what you know or you may not know. You might want to look it up, is apoptompectin, ATP, is the energy that you make in your body. If you don't have it, you don't have energy. That's why my voice got creaky and croaky. That's why my aging just went rapidly into acceleration. That's why I was slumped over. That's why I blacked out last March. And I've got my posture back. I'm getting my energy back at about 60%. I'm watching it through repeated hair tissue tests. I'm sending off another one this strong this week. Hopefully tomorrow, I'm going to clip some more of my hair. I've had the gray reverse. It's starting to grow fast again. And I'm turning my ship around from immense stress back into a healthy, high functioning ship again, even at the age of almost 60. Okay. So ATP is energy. It comes from your adrenal function. It also has everything to do with your gut. Now, if your sodium levels are off and your potassium levels are off, your calcium levels start rising way up, your magnesium starts going way down, you're in stress for too long, it's going to affect your zinc levels, and now you're not going to be able to make stomach acid. If you can't make stomach acid, it's going to feel really, really difficult to digest almost everything. And that's how it's felt for me for over a year. Because I'm used to just digesting away and no problem. But I would eat food and I would get really bogged down because my metabolic was in a slow type 1. So I didn't have enough of a furnace to digest, to make energy. So then my zinc levels, my magnesium levels, everything goes off, because when one element goes off, the rest goes off. Okay? All of these, all of your elements, if one of them is way off, are going to hinge. And actually, even up to 40% off on one element can be up to 99% off on one of your organs. Okay? So here's something that's really interesting. Sorry, Pop, I need to hit you with that. Is you've got to pump in, I hope I don't get it backwards, you've got to pump in 2 potassiums to pump out 3 sodiums. I might have it backwards. So there's this pumping in and pumping out, pumping in and pumping out. There's a sodium and potassium pump that's happening in the body, and you've got to make energy. Oversimplification. 2 and 3, 2 and 3, or 3 and 2, 3 and 2, however way you want to look at it, doesn't matter. But it took me back to African dance and African drumming. It took me back to, after that, birthing my child in 1995. By the time he was in 5, I swore I was going to have him in Afro-Brazilian capoeira, however you want to say it. It is a Brazilian martial art based on the days of slavery. So there's box drumming, and my son would, do the headstands and walking on his hands all across the floor, and they would do it to the beat, and they would have, the music going. And years before that, I was doing African Congolese dance in a group of sometimes 50, 60 women. Barefoot, sarongs on, cowrie shell belt. I still have my leather. I don't buy leather for many years, but leather cowrie shell belt and anklet. And we would dance across the floor. And I did that after taking African drumming with Babatunde Olatunji, who's really, really the icon in terms of the first, who over 60 years ago now brought African drumming to the United States from Nigeria. And he's a Yoruba man. And so one thing I learned when I first started learning drumming was clave. And to learn clave, you had 2 wooden cylinder sticks called clave sticks. Clave, C-L-A-V-E. And if you read in the musical section, in the American musical, they'll say clave to pronounce it. In the Afro-Brazilian style, which is asymmetrical beats and syncopated beats, Afro-Brazilian music is some of my absolute favorite. And Congolese drumming and learning how to be in real time with syncopated beats is something amazing. So you have these 2 wooden cylinder-shaped clave sticks, and this is used when we're doing the music. So think of, you can clap it out. This is what we did in the beginning, was to clap it out to understand clave. So we're going to do 3 and then 2, 3 and then 2. So this is how it goes. You can clap it with me and learn clave beats. Okay, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You get the idea. So you learn this clave beat, this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Clave beat. So when I think about the sodium to potassium pump, the 2 and 3 or the 3 and 2, That's what I think about as a clave beat. And interestingly enough, here's another great nugget. Clave is Spanish for the word key, Key. Now, everything about my work for 37 years has been about, and even one of my courses is named Crucial Keys to Unlocking Disease. It is my absolute best course. It's 5.5 hours of content. It will get you way up into really understanding why you're going to get what you get. Okay. Arthritis has a mind body component, a psychosomatic. Thyroid has, cancer has, knee issues, hip issues, gut issues, addiction. I don't care what it is. There is a mind body, mental thinking component. And there are doctors who were professors and MDs and based. There are very few. There are also psychologists. And I go into a brief history of some of these folks with great respect in my course. It's 5.5 hours on my website. Crucial Keys to Unlocking Disease. So clave, which is the foundation for understanding music, especially Afro-Brazilian, syncopated, asymmetrical beats. I mean, I enjoy linear beats. I don't enjoy the beats of today. I really don't. They're very linear, they're very staccato, they're very concrete, they're very hard driving, and I don't enjoy them. And I see why they're there. And I think it's easier to see why they're there as an elder than it is if I was a younger person today. I'd go, why are you just hating on my music? Well, no, not really, not so much. So I'm going to see, I think I still have a couple more notes here, just a few. Okay. All right, so we used the 2 wooden sticks. I talked about capoeira and the drumming. I talked about how the Nazi, really what their purpose was, they were funded. They were scientifically funded. And then they moved over here. And they were flown over here. And they were brought even over to where my step-grandfather, Paul Ludlow, worked on the accelerator at the Lawrence Livermore Lab, which was owned by the state and the federal government, and then eventually became more of a private industry, the Lawrence Livermore Lab, Paul Ludlow. The Nazi tried to extract, test, preserve, and in quotations, find the bloodline. What did I put here? Oh, one thing. Oh, okay, I already talked about that. The 40% off can make a 99% change in an organ. Oh, your adrenals. I did talk about that your adrenal glands, which are these tiny little things on top of your kidneys. They have a cortex on the outside, super simple to understand. And on the inside, they have a medulla. So there's the medulla and the cortex. Just like your brain has a cortex on the outside, your adrenals have a cortex. That's how they do their electrical signaling activity. Okay. When you're exhausted, your sodium is going to flood the body in inordinate amounts. It's going to drive down the magnesium. It's going to cause what's called in medical speak as a cascade of events that are very predictable. It's going to cause real problems with your zinc levels, which is going to cause real problems. I'm living it right now. I'm looking like it. I'm living it, but that's okay. I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm going to take care of myself. And I'm going to work a plan every single day, which meant I had to change what I was eating. This is not a really good time for me to be eating cooked foods and baked potatoes and all the things that we would normally enjoy and think of as, sort of customary for, winter. I was eating them in the fall, and I was really doing myself a disservice. So I'm back on, getting on foods that are going to be very easy for me to digest. When I share this with clients, and I've had decades to do this, very wealthy people with Parkinson's and people with myasthenia gravis and people of all ages and people with infertility. Sometimes we got to get the gut back up and get these nutrients in before we're going to start turning the corner. Many of these major experts in HTMA have said they started to look worse. They started to feel worse, right? So I know as I'm on my own journey, and this is the strongest level regeneration from the ovarian cancer and several other things in my life where I got very weakened. This is by far And I've overcome by 50 to 60% right now. I've got a ways to go for sure, but I'm on the road. Okay. So it will flood, it will change the gut, it will change your digestion. It's going to take time. Sometimes clients will say, well, I've retested my hair test like twice now, and I'm not really seeing a big difference. And I go, but when I look at your sodium levels, yes, you are getting a lot more energy. So, yes, you are. Stick with it. And then some of these other heavy metals are going to start mobilizing and coming out of your body, because now is the time for them to do so, because you've created the ability for this to happen. So you can start to tonify and cleanse and detoxify. Okay. Okay. I think the last thing I'm just going to share is that I take my glasses off because they're kind of bleh, whatever. Pablo, do you have anything to add? Or are you just going to sleep on the warm blanket? Look at his little cutie pie. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I know if you have any questions, I will stay around. I won't hang around, but I'll stay around for just a couple of moments. I'm going to take a sip of my mud water with cacao and honey and a little bit of coconut cream powder. You are made of the stars. You were made on purpose. You are an amalgamation. You are a domestication. Over the years, you've come through very amphibian, water-based. You're still largely water in a skin bag, 60, 70, 80%, depending on what you want to believe, doesn't matter. Salt water. Sodium keeps you going. Magnesium keeps your central nervous system calmed down. Calcium keeps your heart fired. Iron keeps your compass going, keeps you strong. Iron keeps a man masculine. Copper keeps a woman feminine. We have been misled. For over 30 years, I've been helping my clients reverse diabetes type 2, non-IDDM. Type 2 diabetes. I've been helping people to reach their goals with crippling psoriasis for over 3 decades. I have a testimonial. I realize sometimes it's the younger ones who come on with just the right marketing, and they've got a very sensational title, but they don't have the depth of the decades of seeing the client eject different forms of cysts on the body, like Luna's doing right now on the front of her face. Because infection has been injected inside of you intentionally. Heavy metals have been injected inside of some of us intentionally. Experiments have been done with radiation intentionally. There's no reason why 98% of the world would have a slowed, sluggish, lethargic, tired thyroid, but for intention. We wouldn't have arthritis. We wouldn't have autoimmune. And we wouldn't be spending all this money building all of these huge, humongous, monopolizing hospitals that have themselves so intertwined with not only church and state, but every other agency, which I call an industry. So one pats the other and keeps the other one not only afloat, so use sodium terms, but it also prevents those of us and keeps us squashed and small, keeps us shut up. We're not supposed to use the word cure. We can't use the word medicine. We can't talk about things that we do because we didn't go buy the same credential. But I've spent over $100,000 on my education, beyond a doubt. if my son were here today in a body, which he is here today, but not in a body, he would tell you, I've watched my mama study hours every day, knowing that one day this was going to be the legacy I left him and my grandchildren. It crushed me to the core. That's what you see on my face and my eyes. That's why you hear my voice. This is why you see me looking weary compared to other videos. I didn't just age all of a sudden like this in 2 years. I aged like this from unbelievable, inordinate amount of stress. And that I'm keeping my ship level to the degree that I am is a testament. Because I guarantee you, if and when you lose your children, I want to see how you're functioning, especially when you've got 5 other major stressors in the same year. I don't really remember everything except that I have been trained and programmed to just get up and get it done and keep going. It was either lose the house to foreclosure or remodel it at a really bad time when I was busted, broken physically, to the point I blacked out on the floor. And I needed a hand to hold on to. I needed to say, oh my God, I just need to hear your voice. I need to hear your voice on the other end. I just need you to say, I love you. Just keep going. You can get through this. I know it's a lot, right? But we live during a time where we look on the phone with even the closest ones to us, sending you love. That's what I do for people that I don't know all that well. And I want to make sure I'm giving something, but not for the people that I'm closest to. For the people that I'm absolutely the closest with, that's where you got to know empathy and sympathy, that you cannot leave a person sitting alone. It's tough, but it also may happen to you. It may happen to you one day, and I don't wish it to happen to you, but there's a lot going. I've had 4 phone calls in the last 2 weeks. 2 of the 4 are people I have known over 20 years that have all of a sudden in their 40s and 50s gotten on to meth. One of them in the past was a Waldorf teacher. I was like, what? How did that happen? Probably the same thing they're asking themselves. How did your son get addicted? Your son get addicted to heroin? I haven't touched a drop of alcohol for 37 years. I haven't owned a TV. I've never had a microwave in my home. My home is quiet. On occasion, I play some Bob Marley or some positive music, but most of the time it's quiet. I've got my little juniper wreath candle going here, my soy candle, and I'm going to read, and the dogs love it, that it's relaxing and quiet and non-threatening. But there's some real pathology in terms of how the medical world would look at it. People are so fatigued. They lack energy to such an extreme that you don't know how they're going to react when they start to have more things lumped on top of what is already a heavy burden to carry, financially, emotionally, mentally. The medications change people. If in fact, and I'm going to say it one last time, hospitals were there to heal you, they would have huge commercial juicer. This is not me. This is how you know my calcium levels are way too high. Start over. Cut. Hospitals would have huge commercial juicers on every floor of the hospital for the staff that work there. They wouldn't be carrying a cup of acid, a cup of Joe, a cup of coffee. They would be going and getting, if they're on the front lines, let's take care of our people. If they're in the military, shouldn't they be getting the highest level of nutrition? Because once our people were healed, we would no longer need a military. We would no longer need banks. We would no longer need jobs. because each person would start to function creatively, connected. But the sicker and the sicker and the sicker and the more sick, ill, and infected we become, the more disconnected. And now we've got social distancing. We're going to break it apart even more. So I get it. A lot of you don't have much of an attention span. Back in my day, we would easily sit down and hear an elder speak for an hour or two and just be with bated breath, hoping that they would speak longer. But today we don't have that. Some of you, a couple of people have, texted me, and you start to kind of get off of the periphery there where it's not acceptable. So that's not going to work. Just keep it nice, and don't get mentally deranged on stuff. Stay level, okay? Stay level. So I'm going to say so long. You have a wonderful evening, and I hope this has been a benefit for you. Take good care.